Hello, everyone. My name is Apostolova, and I'm the Barber and Pierre Bagard Professor of Alzheimer's Disease Research and Professor in Neurology, Radiology, Medical and Molecular Genetics at Indiana University School of Medicine. I am delighted to be here with you today and share some of my experiences, how I got to where I'm at today. So I guess I've always had a huge passion for science. Ever since I was a little kid, I was going to be a scientist. That was definitely something I wanted to pursue. Um, my parents, my dad is an organic chemist, my mom is a biochemist, and chemistry was super easy and very interesting for me. So I kind of figured I want to go the route of maybe biochemistry, very exciting area of medically related research. And my mom really talked me out of that in the sense of making the argument that if I go to medical school, which I was firmly opposed to, I might, end up working in medically related research and even pursue a PhD in biochemistry and do biochemistry research, but also have the MD degree and have many more options in front of me. And after, years worth of discussions back and forth, because I'm stubborn, I decided to take her advice. And honestly, I've never looked back. I really enjoyed meeting the patients, learning their stories, taking care of them. So the MD part of me is something I rather enjoy, and is caring for others is ingrained in my being, I suppose. So it was a calling I didn't quite understand at that time, but I also was very adamant I'm going to be a scientist. So after graduating medical school in Bulgaria, which is part of the former Eastern Europe, I came to the United States. I was following the path of my mother, who had already transferred her career here. I stayed behind to do my medical studies and got my green card while there and just transitioned over. The first years in the United States were all very clinically oriented. I did my neurology residency, and then that was in the University of Iowa, followed by a 2-year fellowship in cognitive disorders and behavioral neurology dementia with Jeff Cummings at UCLA. Why neurology? That is a question I'm often asked, and the answer is pretty straightforward. After I had my neurology rotation in the middle of my medical school, there was nothing else that inspired me after that. It was a very easy path to just follow. It was amazing once I learned about the brain and how little we know about it, and how we have to be so detail oriented and quite intuitive when we examine our patients, do our diagnostic process, assign clinical decision making, and all. It was just so enormously puzzling, interesting, and stimulating at the same time. So that was when I decided I'm going to be a neurologist. So here we are. I did my dementia fellowship and stayed on as faculty at UCLA for 10 years after my fellowship. While in my second year in fellowship, I wrote my K award and submitted that for the Beeson program, which is a K76 mechanism these days. Back in the day, it was a K23. And I got it. It was funded on the first application. I was thrilled by that outcome. And that first research grant was focused on developing novel sensitive methods to more accurately predict conversion from mild cognitive impairment to dementia in the elderly. And it was focused on imaging. I'm an imager by scientific calling, if you will. And at that time, I was looking into MRI in three-dimensional modeling techniques and surface-based mapping, which was quite cutting edge and still is. Lo and behold, some other areas of dementia research also were of interest. I have done some work in the cognitive decline observed in Parkinson's disease with some collaborators. I've done some work on the behavioral changes in Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. And then I began developing an interest in genetics as well, especially after the whole genome was mapped out and more genetic risk factors for Alzheimer's started to be unearthed beyond APOE4 and the autosomal dominant genes. So at that time, I became an imaging geneticist, and that is an area of imaging where the influences of gene risk variants are studied. And so my R01 and the subsequent KO2 grants were focused on imaging genetics. And then I relocated to Indiana University. And shortly after I got here, together with some of my close colleagues and collaborators, Gil Rabinovich, Brad Duckers, and Maria Carrillo, we decided that there is a huge gap in Alzheimer's disease research, which is early onset Alzheimer's disease, which is not systematically studied. So we, in a short few months, put together an R01 grant on early onset Alzheimer's disease called LEADS. There it is, the Longitudinal Early Onset Alzheimer's Disease Study. And later on, after it was funded, it was converted to a UO1 since it's a big consortium similar to the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, only focused on early onset participants. We now currently have 18 sites. We have 7-8 cores and close to 30 or over 30 participating institutions. So it's a pretty big endeavor, and this is what I have been focusing the majority of my time administratively and research-wise in the last 4 years. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.